I should have known they weren't coming to celebrate. When I saw their faces at the back of the church, my estranged mother, my jealous sister, and the aunt who raised me like a burden, I didn't feel warmth. I felt a warning. And when the pastor asked if anyone objects, they stood up, subscribe for more powerful stories of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. They say the suburbs are peaceful. Manicured lawns. Cookie-cutter houses. Neighbors who wave but never ask questions, but behind the pale blue shutters of 11, Oak Ridge Lane, peace was just a prop. I was 7 when I first realized I didn't matter. It was the day Janine won her second-grade spelling bee. My mother, Deborah, baked a cake, made custom t-shirts that said Janine the Genius, and invited half the neighborhood to celebrate. I'd drawn a picture that day of me, her, and Janine holding hands. I left it on the kitchen counter. She never mentioned it. That was my childhood in suburban New York. A string of quiet omissions. No outright cruelty, just the kind of indifference that clings to your skin like damp clothes. Janine was everything I wasn't. Blonde, graceful, always composed. She got piano lessons, ballet recitals, and new dresses every Easter. I got hand-me-downs and forgotten school pickups. When people asked if I was her sister, they'd blink like they were searching for the resemblance. My father, David Klein, was my one safe place. He'd sneak me out for donuts on Sunday mornings and call me Dottie. Said I had his eyes. Told me I was special. But even he started showing up less and less. Late nights became silent dinners, and silent dinners became weekends away. Until one day, he was just gone, no goodbye. No suitcase. Just a note and a front door left swinging open. My mother didn't cry. Didn't scream. She just pressed her lips into a line and looked at me like I was the reason, and maybe, in her mind, I was. After that, things got colder. I became the chore. The burden. Aunt Susan started coming around more often, hovering in corners, whispering things I wasn't meant to hear. You can't expect much from the quiet one. She takes after David. I wasn't quiet because I had nothing to say. I was quiet because no one listened. I spent most days in my room, sketching. Drawing was the only place I could exist without being compared. I'd sketch fairy tale worlds, places where the forgotten daughter turned out to be the queen. Where people came back. Where love wasn't something you had to beg for. I remember one day, I overheard my mother on the phone saying, "Dorothy's not like Janine. She's soft. She'll never survive out there." That was the moment I knew I had to leave. At 18, I packed everything I owned into 2 duffel bags. No note. No scene. Just silence. The same silence they'd taught me. I moved to Brooklyn and never looked back. They didn't call. Didn't check if I was alive, and I never expected them to. But years later, when I found love, real, unconditional love, and planned the wedding I never thought I'd have, they showed up, not with gifts, not with apologies, but with destruction. And that's when the quiet girl finally decided to speak. Brooklyn wasn't part of some grand plan. It was just far enough from Westchester to feel like escape. And just alive enough to feel like possibility. I found a tiny studio in Bed-Stuy above a bakery that opened before sunrise. The walls were thin, the radiator hissed like a snake in winter, and the ceiling leaked when it rained, but it was mine. No curated perfection. No mother's expectations. No Janine posters on the fridge. Just me and a space where I could breathe. I took whatever jobs I could find at first, barista in the mornings, assistant at an art supply store in the afternoons. At night, I'd draw. It wasn't just escape anymore, it was creation. My hands did what my voice never could, they told stories. Of girls who ran, of women who ruled, of storms that didn't destroy, but transformed. People noticed. I started posting my sketches online. A fashion blogger commissioned me for logo work. Then a boutique asked if I could design a mural. One by one, the calls started coming in, not just for what I could do, but for what I could see. I built a portfolio. A client list. A reputation. Every penny I earned went back into the dream. I traded that leaky studio for a slightly less leaky loft in Williamsburg. I got my first tablet. My first website. And for the first time in my life, when people said my name, it wasn't followed by Janine's, and then came Marcus. He walked into my life the way sunlight spills through old windows, slow, steady, and impossible to ignore. We met at a gallery opening. He stood beside one of my framed pieces, squinting, smiling, completely unaware I was the artist. "This one's different," he'd said. "It feels like someone finally told the truth." We talked the rest of the night. Marcus wasn't flashy. He didn't care where I came from or who I was related to. He never once asked about Janine or my family name. He just wanted to know me, my favorite brush strokes, my late-night thoughts, my fears, my weird love for horror movies and ginger snaps. With him, I felt something I'd never known before: safe. I wasn't walking on eggshells or trying to earn affection. I just was. And that was enough. Years passed like pages in a sketchbook, messy, full, beautiful. We traveled. We laughed. We argued and made up. We built a rhythm. And then, one spring evening under cherry blossoms in Central Park, he got down on one knee and asked me to be his wife. I didn't hesitate. I said yes with my whole soul. I didn't think about the past. I didn't miss the family I'd left behind, because I had a new one now, one built not from blood or duty, but from love. I was happy, whole, free. But just when I thought I'd buried my old life for good, it came knocking. It was early April when Marcus proposed. The city was just beginning to thaw, streets shedding their winter grime, cafes dragging tables onto sidewalks, and Central Park bursting into soft pink bloom. I remember the way the cherry blossoms framed the sky like a watercolor painting. Delicate and full of promise, we were walking along the Bow Bridge, sipping lavender coffee from our favorite corner shop. I thought it was just another quiet Sunday morning, just us, as always, away from the noise of the world. But then he stopped. He turned to me, his thumb gently brushing the inside of my wrist like he always did when he was nervous. And suddenly he was down on one knee. "Dorothy," he said, "you've built a life from nothing and made it art. I don't want to just witness that anymore. I want to be part of it. Will you marry me?" I stared at him for a long second. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I did. And it terrified me. My mind rushed to the past. To promises broken. To the cold detachment I'd grown up with. To every example of what love shouldn't be. But Marcus wasn't them. He never was. And I realized, in that moment, I wasn't the broken girl I used to be either. I wasn't waiting for someone to save me. I'd already saved myself. Marcus was just the next chapter. One I got to write. "Yes," I whispered. Then louder. "Yes." He laughed, pulled me into his arms, and we stood under the cherry blossoms, surrounded by strangers cheering, pigeons scattering, and spring air so soft it felt like silk. That night, we celebrated with close friends, my chosen family. There was no mention of mothers or sisters or anyone I'd left behind. Just laughter, toasts, and a warm buzz of belonging I'd never known growing up. We didn't want a huge wedding. Just something intimate. Intentional. Something that reflected us. I started planning the way I approached my art, with heart, with care, with vision. My best friend Leah offered to help coordinate. Marcus's brother offered to DJ. A former client who ran a flower shop insisted on covering the arrangements as a gift. There were no seating charts filled with tension. No distant relatives to impress. Just love, blooming in every detail. For the first time in my life, a major event wasn't about survival, it was about celebration. I wasn't shrinking to make others comfortable or hiding parts of myself to avoid judgment. This time, I was seen. This time, I was chosen. As the date drew closer, I felt more at peace than I ever had, but peace is fragile. And just when I was wrapping up the last few details, certain that nothing could ruin what we'd built, my phone rang. It was a number I hadn't seen in years. A name I hadn't spoken in even longer, Susan, and just like that, the past I had buried clawed its way back. The call came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was at my desk, finalizing the guest list and emailing our officiant, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Scam calls were nothing new, but something made me answer. "Hello?" I said, distracted. There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in over a decade clipped, cold, and unmistakably hers. "Dorothy. It's Susan." I froze. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, and suddenly the rain outside sounded deafening. "Aunt Susan?" I asked, like I wasn't sure if ghosts could use cell phones. "Yes," she said, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "We heard about the wedding." My heart kicked up. She didn't wait for me to respond. "Your mother told Janine." "Janine told me. We'd like to come." I almost laughed, out of disbelief more than amusement. "Your mother. We'd like to come." Like we'd spoken last week. Like they hadn't erased me from their lives. I swallowed. "Why?" "Because we're your family," she said, that passive-aggressive tone dripping from every syllable. "And family should be there for things like this." Family? I wanted to scream. Where was family when I was 19, broke and alone in Brooklyn, living on cereal and coffee? Where was family when I graduated college with no one in the crowd to cheer me on? But a strange thing happened in that moment. I didn't hang up. Instead, I asked, "All of you?" "Yes," she said. "Me, your mother, and Janine." The triumvirate of my pain, my gut screamed no. Every instinct, every warning sign, every ounce of hard-earned peace begged me to shut the door. But something else, something smaller, softer, hesitated. Hope. A foolish part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, they'd changed. Maybe this was their version of an apology. Maybe they'd come to finally acknowledge the woman I'd become. So I said, "Okay. You can come." And the second I hung up, I regretted it. I told Marcus that night. He looked at me like I'd invited a pack of wolves to a garden party but didn't say a word. He just wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "Whatever happens, I've got you." That's the thing about healing, it's not always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to face what hurt you and see if it still has power. For a week, I tried to stay calm. Told myself I was being mature. Told myself people could change. I even added them to the guest list, tucked in the back, just in case, but something in my chest wouldn't settle. A wait. A warning. I kept picturing them walking into the ceremony, smiles painted on like masks. And beneath those masks? The same people who once made me feel invisible. Still, I let them come. Still, I opened the door, and soon, I'd find out. Some doors are better left closed. At first, I brushed it off as bad luck. The florist called 3 days before the wedding, voice tight with panic. "I'm so sorry, Dorothy, but we never received your final confirmation. The delivery won't happen on time." That couldn't be right. I remembered hitting send, triple-checking the email. But when I searched my inbox, the message was gone. Deleted. Still, I stayed calm. Leah, my maid of honor, calmed me even more. "It's just flowers," she said. "We'll find a backup. You'll still be marrying Marcus, not a bouquet." We laughed. I tried to believe her. Then came the dress. It had been hanging in Leah's guest room for weeks, pressed, covered, untouched. The day before the rehearsal dinner, I took it out just to breathe it in, to remind myself that this was real, but when I unzipped the garment bag, the scent hit me first, bitter, sour. Then I saw the stain. Deep red, across the bodice and halfway down the silk train. "Wine." Leah's gasp behind me said everything. "Dorothy. What the hell?" It wasn't a spill. It wasn't an accident. Someone had poured wine over my dress. I stood there, frozen, a chill racing up my spine despite the warmth in the room. My throat closed. My thoughts scattered. Leah immediately jumped into action, calling a cleaner who owed her a favor, promising me they'd fix it, but I wasn't hearing her anymore. All I could see were 3 faces: my mother's blank stare, Aunt Susan's smug smile, Janine's too sweet tone when she'd hugged me at the rehearsal, whispering, "You clean up nice." The dots started connecting, slow and cold. That morning, I'd overheard Leah on the phone in the hallway, whispering furiously. When I stepped out, she jumped and hung up. When I asked if everything was okay, she lied. I knew she did, her voice cracked. But I let it go. I trusted her, now I wasn't so sure. Later that night, after the dress was rushed to a specialty cleaner and my backup plan for flowers was underway, I found Leah on the rooftop, smoking, a habit she only returned to when she was stressed or hiding something. "You want to talk about it?" I asked, careful. She looked at me, then away. "It's nothing. Just wetting nerves." "No," I said gently. "It's not." "Who's been calling you?" Her silence answered more than words ever could. "Janine?" I guessed. She flinched. "She's been texting me," she admitted. "Saying you've changed. That you're not who you pretend to be." I felt the air leave my lungs. "She said she just wanted me to think twice about standing beside you," Leah continued. I didn't respond. "I swear." I nodded, slowly. It wasn't just sabotage. It was calculated, and my sister, my family, had started their game, but what they didn't know, I don't play to win their approval anymore. I play to survive, and now I was ready to fight. The ceremony was everything I dreamed. At first, sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows of the small garden hall in Brooklyn. Friends, laughter, soft piano music. Leah stood beside me, steady despite everything. Marcus looked devastatingly handsome, his smile calming every last jitter in my chest. I'd made it. Despite the sabotage, the stains, the whispers, I was here. And I was ready. The officiant began the vows. My voice trembled slightly, but not with fear. With power. With love. Marcus squeezed my hands. "Forever," he said. "No matter what." And then it happened. "If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace." It's a line everyone hears. A tradition, a formality, but in my case, it wasn't. From the back row, I heard the scrape of chairs, then footsteps, 3 of them, my mother, Janine, Aunt Susan. They stood like ghosts in the middle of my wedding, faces expressionless. My heart stopped. Guests whispered. Leah turned pale. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. "I object," Janine said, her voice clear and sharp. The room fell into stunned silence. Marcus turned, confused. "I couldn't move. She's lying to all of you," Janine continued, pulling a folder from her bag. "This woman, this bride, has spent years pretending to be someone she's not." She opened the folder and began to read, out loud, "My name is Dorothy Klein. I grew up feeling invisible. I struggle with anxiety. I sometimes fear that I'm unlovable. My therapy notes. My private sessions." The words I'd only ever spoken in the safety of a counselor's office. Vulnerabilities I had buried and bled out in hopes of healing, and now they were being weaponized. Publicly, I couldn't breathe. My knees locked. My body screamed run, but Marcus stepped forward. "Enough," he said, his voice booming through the hall. Janine looked smug, like she'd won. But he walked past her and stood in front of me, blocking her from my view. "She's not hiding who she is. She's survived more than you could ever imagine," he said, his voice calm, but firm. "Those words you read? They're proof of strength. Not shame." He turned to the crowd. "If you came here expecting a flawless bride, you're in the wrong place. But if you came to witness real love, built on honesty and scars and healing, then stay." Silence, then applause. Soft at first, then stronger. Leah stepped beside me, wiping a tear from her cheek. "You okay?" she whispered. I nodded, even though I wasn't. Not yet, but I would be, because Marcus didn't flinch, because my friends didn't leave, because this time, when the worst came for me, I didn't face it alone. My family tried to ruin my wedding. But all they did was prove why they'd lost the right to call themselves family, and they hadn't even seen what was coming next. I held it together through the ceremony, through the vows, through the applause, through the laughter that returned, shaky but resilient, after Janine and her circus of shame slunk out of the room like shadows chased by light. But the second the reception ended, and the last guest hugged me goodbye, I collapsed, not gracefully. Not in poetic silence, I sobbed in the bridal suite bathroom, curled up on the floor in my wedding dress, my chest heaving like it was trying to rip itself open. Marcus sat beside me, still in his suit, saying nothing. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't rush me, he just held my hand. I don't know how long we stayed there, but eventually, I stood up, took a deep breath, and met my own reflection. Eyes red. Makeup smudged. Crown slightly crooked, still standing, still me. Later that night, after the storm inside me settled into a quiet hum, we lay in bed, newly married, but not quite at peace. Marcus tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Are you okay? No, I said honestly. But I will be. Because something had shifted, they'd humiliated me. Or tried to, but in doing so, they gave me clarity. They showed me, once and for all, who they really were. Not family. Not victims. But manipulators. Performers, and I was done playing their game. I pulled out my old journals, my backups, even that dusty box of documents I had shoved in the back of my closet years ago. I started digging, and the more I dug, the angrier I got. Janine, the golden child, had a not-so-golden trail behind her. 2 years ago, she'd registered a consulting business that never filed taxes, yet somehow afforded luxury vacations and designer handbags. Her business partner? A man currently under investigation for laundering. Aunt Susan, the self-proclaimed charity queen, had her hands in multiple nonprofits. But one in particular, the Silver Hope Fund, hadn't filed a single financial report in 3 years. Donors' names were public. So were the missing funds. And my mother, the queen of suburban respectability, she'd been blackmailing her neighbor, Mr. Dalton, the elderly widower with a gambling habit. I found copies of the threatening letters. I recognized her handwriting. They thought I was still the quiet girl. The one who ran away and hid, but I wasn't hiding anymore. I was documenting, collecting, preparing. I didn't want revenge, not in the dramatic, explosive way. I wanted truth. I wanted exposure, so I started planning. Quietly. Carefully. With Marcus by my side and my chosen family ready to help however they could, the storm had come, and it didn't destroy me, it awakened something. They tore open my wounds at my wedding. But now I had nothing left to protect, and everything to bring down. Vengeance, I learned, doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes, it arrives in silence, wrapped in emails, sealed in envelopes, and whispered through the cracks of polite society. I didn't need to scream to be heard, I just needed receipts. I began with Janine, it wasn't hard. The documents I found in her old email archives, things she carelessly saved to our shared cloud back when she assumed I'd never be worth spying on, were enough. Fraudulent invoices. Unreported income. Wire transfers that didn't match her business statements. I compiled it all, clean and detailed, and sent it, anonymously, to the IRS with a polite note, for your review. I thought integrity mattered. Next came Aunt Susan. The Silver Hope Fund had raised over $300,000 in the past 3 years. A noble cause, on paper, supporting struggling single mothers. Except very few of those mothers ever saw a dime. I contacted a journalist friend, someone I'd done freelance design work for in the past. I didn't tell him it was personal. I just pitched a story. When charity is a cover, the face is behind a failing nonprofit. He bit. Within 2 weeks, her name was in the local news. Charity under fire for missing funds. A follow-up story confirmed the city had opened an audit, and my mother, Deborah Klein, the queen of cold perfection, I saved her for last. The blackmail letters to Mr. Dalton, the elderly neighbor she'd shaken down for years, were typed, but she always signed them. I sent copies to his son, a lawyer. And to her HOA board, her spotless image? Cracked. Whispers of extortion started circling the neighborhood faster than she could pour a cup of tea. the best part, I never showed my face. I went on with my life like nothing had happened. Marcus and I took weekend trips upstate. I picked up a new client. We hosted dinner parties with friends who had no idea I was quietly dismantling 3 empires of cruelty. Every week, another piece fell. Janine posted a tearful video online, claiming a jealous hater was targeting her. Comments were brutal. Clients dropped her. The IRS started asking questions. Aunt Susan tried to defend herself on local TV. She looked shaken. Her hands trembled. Donations stopped, and my mother? She didn't return my call. Not that I expected her to, but one afternoon, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just a single line inside, "Was it you?" I smiled and threw it away because I didn't need to confess. They knew. They'd tried to ruin me with whispers, sabotage, and shame, but I came back with truth. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten, I exposed. They underestimated me, thought the quiet girl would stay silent forever. But silence was never weakness, it was the calm before the reckoning. It's quiet now. Not the kind of silence I grew up with, the cold, stifling kind that made every footstep echo with judgment. No, this is a warm kind of quiet. A peaceful hum that fills our home like soft music, where nothing is expected but everything is felt. Marcus and I live just outside the city now. A small cottage tucked behind ivy-covered walls and blooming jasmine. It's not extravagant, but it's ours. Built with love, not performance. Here, the air feels honest. Most mornings, I sit by the window with my sketchpad and a cup of tea. The light filters in, painting the pages in soft gold. Sometimes, Marcus joins me, reading aloud from whatever book he's buried in. Other times, we just exist together. Comfortable. Real, the chaos has passed. The headlines faded. My family's names now appear in whispers, if at all. Janine lost most of her sponsors. Her consulting career fizzled under scrutiny. Last I heard, she moved out of state, rebranding, no doubt, still trying to outpace her shadow. Aunt Susan's charity never recovered. She gave some rehearsed apology on TV, then disappeared from public life. The kind of downfall wrapped in polite disgrace. And my mother? Deborah Klein still lives in Westchester, but her social throne cracked beneath her. The HOA quietly revoked her presidency. People cross the street now instead of stopping to chat. They all got what they gave, but that's not what I dwell on anymore, because, in trying to ruin me, they gave me the clearest gift of all, freedom. I used to ache for their approval. I used to imagine a version of life where they saw me, loved me, chose me, but the wedding didn't destroy that dream. It revealed it for what it always was, a fantasy built on fragile hope. That day wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my truth. I didn't lose anything. I gained everything. A husband who stood in front of the world and said, "She's enough." A friend who never flinched, even when her loyalty was tested. A home, a career, a self reborn from every scar I used to hide, and a name, Dorothy Klein, once a name that felt like a chain. Now, it's mine. Fully. Fiercely. Not because it was given to me, but because I reclaimed it. I chose peace, not the passive kind. Not the turn the other cheek kind, the kind you fight for. The kind you earn. So now, when people ask about the wedding, I smile, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. It didn't mark the day I got married, it marked the day I finally, truly came home to myself, and that, more than anything, is the kind of love I always deserved.